Do you have a story to share with the world? Of course you do. We all have stories to share. An Anchor podcast allows you to share your interests in a way that connects to others all across the globe. If you have been considering starting your own podcast and don't know where to begin, Anchor makes it easy to record, edit, and publish with the click of a button. You can even add music. Whether it's crime dramas, self improvement, paranormal adventures, or tips about parenting, you too can share your unique imprint on the world. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. You've got this. I believe in you. Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. So let's talk a little bit about inner child wounds. Many of us are running on a program that we created in our subconscious mind from the time that we were born to roughly age 6. And during this time frame, we are in what's called a theta brainwave state. And these are considered our observatory years, when we learn by watching our parents, our teachers, and our peers on how to function as a human being in society. And oftentimes, this is when trauma can occur in our lives. And we hold that energy through our lives by playing out different scenarios through our relationships, our financial circumstances, our careers, and in other ways. And reprogramming the subconscious mind is not difficult to do, but it does take some conscious recognition of knowing and visualizing the repeated programs that are playing out in our lives like a broken record that may need to be changed. So, I want to discuss 4 of the basic, deep core inner child wounds that many of us have deeply ingrained in our subconscious mind. And as we begin to heal, as we begin to dive a little bit deeper uh, into that process, we will begin to notice that certain emotions that present themselves on the top layer of the onion are attached to these 4 deeper layered emotions that can present themselves on a much more subconscious level. So, these 4 inner child wounds that I'm going to discuss today are abandonment, trust, guilt, and neglect. And also rejection kind of plays in there as well. Now, there are other wounds, but these are the deepest ones that really go into the subconscious mind that we have to kind of pluck out of there, figure out, what is it that has created this wound? What was the circumstance or the experience that created such a traumatic event or such a deep emotional charge that has now resulted in some sort of scenarios that may be playing out as we get older in our adult lives. So, an abandonment wound looks like, and now this can be on both sides of the spectrum. So, it can present itself as hating being alone, someone who completely hates being alone, or someone who hates being around others. It can be both ends of the spectrum. So, if you have been abandoned in the past, you may have that sense of codependency that I have got to be around someone at all times because I'm so terrified of being alone because as a child I was alone, I was left behind. However, you could also present yourself as I don't want to be around others because anytime I attach myself to someone else, there's that fear of them leaving me. So you can always feel like you're being left out, that FOMO, fear of missing out on things. You may threaten to leave. You may be the one in the relationship that, or vice versa, that says, hey, I'm going to break up with you before you break up with me because I don't want to feel the pain of you rejecting me or you abandoning me. And so they will often be the ones that check out first. And that can be really difficult if you are dating someone or in a relationship with someone who does that, because it's like that fight, flight, or freeze response. They are always fleeing to get out of the situation because they're afraid of what's going to happen. They're afraid of getting hurt. They're afraid of having their heart broken because as a child, this was something that happened to them and it created a very, very deep trauma. So Oftentimes, the abandonment wound will attract people who are emotionally unavailable. I did a previous podcast on why empaths attract emotionally unavailable partners, and I recommend or suggest that you go back and listen to that one. It has some really good information as to why we as empaths have a tendency to attract people who are not willing to commit or connect with us. And it has to do with us. It has to do with our own abandonment issues and our own committal issues into why we struggle with that. And it goes all the way back to our childhood. And diving a little bit deeper to figure out, where did that start? Where did that particular pattern, that subconscious pattern begin? At what age did that happen? What was the specific experience or situation that caused that emotional charge around abandonment? And this is where the EFT tapping and the emotion code can really play into effect, because when I'm working with clients, I can muscle test to see how far back did this particular abandonment wound start. And oftentimes it can be in the childhood, but can also go back into the womb of the mother. It could be that empaths are carrying an abandonment wound from their mother, or even going back generationally, or even farther back into past lives. So when we utilize the applied kinesiology to muscle test and to go a little bit deeper into the core wound to see where did this start, to find the root cause. It's like people will talk about cord cutting, and I actually say, not to cut cords, to pluck cords or pull cords. It's like cutting grass, right? If you cut the grass, then it gets shorter, yes, but it's going to grow back. But if you pluck the grass out or pull the grass out, it's more than likely not to come back. Almost like plucking your eyebrows or something, for along those lines. So you want to go in and find that root cause and pluck it out. Okay. So now let's move on to the trust wound. This is going to fall deep into the root chakra, that sense of safety and security, that those deep reds and blacks, and that grounding that we feel when our root chakra is in alignment, in balance, and very, very stable. Someone who is suffering with a trust wound from their childhood could present themselves as they just don't feel safe. They don't feel safe in the world. They don't feel safe in their environment. They don't feel safe in their own skin. They're afraid of being hurt, so they will cut people off. They may be uh, the ones who will be very cold, be very difficult to get to know. They put up this very strong barrier around themselves that doesn't let anyone in, because they're afraid of showing that vulnerability, because as a child they were hurt. They some sort of a situation happened where their trust was broken and taken from them. Oftentimes, people with a trust wound don't even trust themselves. We are an inner reflection out into our external environment. So, oftentimes, when we don't trust ourselves, we don't trust others, and vice versa. Trust wounded people also are extremely insecure. They will bring these insecurities to light. They will. Maybe they've been betrayed in the past. And so anytime they get into a relationship with someone else, they have a fear of that trust being broken again. So they show it through insecurities, maybe just holding on to the relationship really tightly, trying to control things in the relationship or the circumstances in their lives. Trust wounded individuals will also find this deep need for external validation, because they don't trust themselves. They don't trust their own intuition, their own higher self, their own guidance. So they will seek external validation in order to move forward in their lives. And oftentimes that will put them off of their path, because they are seeking that external validation, which may or may not resonate with who they are on a soul level. And then they will continue to follow their life's paths through the eyes of others. And then that will guide them in ways that can continue the pattern of mistrust and betrayal and kind of disempower them in a way, so to speak. So, trust wounded individuals often attract people who don't feel safe. They will attract those people who have an unbalanced root chakra, someone who's unsafe, unstable, and ungrounded, because basically that's what they're looking for, the groundedness. However, through the law of attraction, they will literally attract people who are ungrounded to them because they are desperately looking for that safety and that security net. The guilt wound. The guilt wound. Now, this is such a deeply ingrained emotion, guilt and shame. Oftentimes, I have worked with clients where we work through the rejection, the abandonment, and then deep, deep, deep in there is the guilt and the shame. So, a guilt wounded individual doesn't like to ask for favors. They may feel like it's a burden. They feel guilty taking up someone's time to help them. They're afraid to set boundaries. I recently did a podcast on boundaries. If you fall into the guilt wound category, then I suggest you go back and listen to some of the steps on setting healthy boundaries. Oftentimes, guilt wound individuals will have a very hard time saying no. They feel guilty for saying no. This is a very strong trait amongst empaths, me in particular as well. There was many, many years that I fell into that people pleaser category because I felt guilty for when people would ask me for things or ask for help. I would feel guilty setting a boundary and saying, I just can't do it today. I'm not up for it, or I don't feel good enough to help today. But then I would feel this tremendous amount of guilt come over me that, oh my gosh, I'm this horrible person. I should have helped them. So that can stem back all the way back to your childhood. Uh, Oftentimes, guilt wounded individuals will feel sorry or bad for things. I will see this with my clients. They will begin to open up and share their story. And then at the end, they will say, I'm sorry, or I apologize. I didn't mean to share all of that with you. When really what we're trying to do is get to the root cause of the issue. And right there is the alert for me to say there's some sort of a guilt wound right there. If you are apologizing or saying sorry for how you feel or sharing your story, then I definitely know that that's a good indicator for me that there's some sort of guilt wound that lies deep, deep underneath. Oftentimes, the guilt wound will attract people who make them feel guilty because they are so accustomed to feeling the guilt themselves that it's almost like that deep, deep emotion feeds off of it when others make them feel guilty. So, this is where that empath and narcissist concept kind of comes into play, where the empath who feels the guilt will attract the narcissist who makes them feel guilty. And it will be something that it's like a repeated pattern or a repeated cycle until you can go back and really take a look deeper into where did that experience happen as a child, where that guilt set in, where did that shame set in. And then once you can clear that pattern, you will begin to notice that your relationships will shift as well. The types of partners or the types of people that come into your life will begin to shift. So, the neglect wound. This is also a very deep seated wound. These people are going to present themselves with fears of being vulnerable. They have a very difficult time showing themselves. Oftentimes, as children, we are in our authenticity. We're in our most genuine self when we are kids. And we will share who we are. We will present ourselves to the world. And if we are bullied or picked on for who we are, or not accepted, then we will put up a vulnerability wall. We will begin to not share ourselves with the world out of fear of not fitting in or not belonging, or not even, understanding that we are unique in who we are. But as children, we don't see it that way. It seems like a really big issue when it could be something that's much smaller. Neglected, wounded people will present themselves with low self esteem. They also, just like the guilt wounded individuals, will struggle to say no. They have a hard time setting boundaries. People who have been neglected will repress their emotions. They aren't necessarily sure how to share their emotions. They struggle with speaking their feelings. They have a hard time doing that because they didn't really have anyone to share those feelings with when they were children, because they were neglected. They were left alone. They also can struggle with letting things go. This is where people who are hoarders, or people who hold on to things, they have a hard time letting things go because they have created an emotional attachment to items or to things, and or even to people for that matter. Uh, they, as children, may have gotten really attached to the items around them because they didn't have the parental figures there, because maybe they were neglected, at a very young age. So they would hold on to things that made them feel comfortable, that made them feel safe. And now that program has repeated itself throughout their adult life. And as they collect things, it makes them feel good. It makes them feel safe and comforted. And so they have a really difficult time letting go of it because they have created an emotional attachment to it. Neglected wound will also get easily agitated or frustrated, and that can go back to their repression of emotions. They will repress their emotions, and then they will start to bubble to the surface like a pressure cooker, but they won't know how to show those emotions. It's kind of like a child before they can. Right when they start to talk, you kind of tell your kids, they start to get frustrated and upset, and you're like, okay, use your words, use your words so I can understand how you feel. Oftentimes people who have been neglected don't know how to use their words. They don't know how to express themselves in a healthy way because they have utilized those suppressed emotions, and then they wait all the way to the point that those emotions are to the surface, that they start to bubble up, and they could lash out, they could explode. There could be some very deep seated or heated emotions that come up. Normally, the neglected, wounded people will attract people who don't appreciate them. They have that sense of, well, I've never really had anyone in my life who cared about me anyway, so why would I attract someone who appreciates me and loves me for who I am? Because, maybe my parents or my guardians didn't love me as a child. So now as an adult, I continue to carry these subconscious programs in my mind. So, like I said, reprogramming the subconscious mind is not difficult, but it does take the conscious recognition of understanding, you know, what it is that is the deep seated emotion or the wound that goes deeper into the subconscious mind. So, as I went through these, ask yourself, were any of these things that I was talking about you? And I know with me several of these were, and I have been able to work through a lot of them myself to really go a little bit deeper into my subconscious mind to see, where did these programs begin? And I've learned through this, my own journey, I have learned several techniques to reprogram these old, outdated subconscious patterns that no longer serve me. And, part of my intention of sharing this information with you all is to share some of these healing modalities and techniques so that you too can heal. We can heal. And it all starts with consciously recognizing our own wounds and wanting to be able to heal them and to move forward. So, I specialize in EFT tapping, the emotion code, quantum healing sessions. And, these are some of the different services that I provide. However, I like to share this information, with you on this podcast to be able to allow you to also tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. So if you feel guided to do so, then please, reach out, schedule a session with me. We can definitely work through some of these deeper wounds. And oftentimes, I'm noticing with clients is that they have no idea where the wound even began. And we'll go back, I'll muscle test back into their subconscious mind and come up with a certain scenario that may have happened when they were 4 or 5 years old that they vaguely remember. Oftentimes, they don't even remember it, and we go back and we clear the energy around that, and then we can move ourselves forward through the timeline to heal. So, um, these are just, like I said, these are just 4 of the basic inner child wounds, and there's many more, but these are the deepest ones that I think many of us have struggled with and continue to struggle with. And until we can really dive in there and heal those childhood wounds, we won't really be able to heal as adults. And, moving forward with our lives in a happy and healthy way is what we deserve. We deserve to live our lives, not holding on to the old baggage from our past that oftentimes we don't even remember is there. Find it lucky that if you can remember that experience, that we can go back into that particular situation and figure out, why is there some sort of an emotional charge around that particular circumstance that happened to me as a child. So I hope that this podcast was helpful, and I know that it was kind of another quick one, but I felt compelled to have to share this because this is something that I know I have really worked very deeply on myself, and I am noticing a trend coming up with many of the people that I work with, many of them being empaths, and I thought that it would just be beneficial to share this. So I hope that you are all doing well, and I look forward to sharing more information with you soon. You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.